Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 American Express DFS Tactics show. Apologies for the extremely delayed start. You all know I play in a co-ed wiffle ball league in the winter on Wednesdays. We've got a lot to cover, and I don't want to waste any time. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from Fantasy National, but they are merging with another golf analytics site, so don't be surprised if I migrate over to the new site eventually. But for now, all statistics are provided by Fantasy National. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where earlier this week I posted some research regarding the tournament, some course info, tournament info, patterns of previous winners, players in the field this week who fit those patterns. If you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show, so that'll be out later this evening. You want to see the players that I've wagered with my own money and the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. I can't recommend it enough. By subscribing to his article, you're going to get his deluxe version, which comes out early on Wednesdays. That has his favorite plays, top values, projected ownerships, all of that. Can't recommend that you subscribe to that enough. And go show him some support. Follow him over. That is where we put our detailed write-ups for the 2026 Picks Challenge. After 1 week, it is tied 4-4. So I'm going to try and get back on the right side of the scoreboard, if you will, against Gabe this week. Make sure you're following him over on social media. Lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. I have a poll question typed up. Would love to hear the community's thoughts on that. And then, who's your winner? Who are you targeting? Who are you staying away from? All of that. Anything and everything. American Express. Put your thoughts and opinions into the chat. If you're not able to catch the show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 26 American Express. And we start, as we normally do, on a Wednesday evening with the super forecast for the tournament. Not a lot to cover here. Very little wind tomorrow. Very little wind Friday and Saturday. There might be a little bit of wind on Sunday. Do remember this is a 54-hole cut. Players will play in some order: La Quinta, Nicklaus Tournament Course, and the Stadium Course. Anybody who makes the cut will play the Stadium Course on Sunday. But you've heard it probably all week. You'll hear it again from me. Dome-like conditions here in Coachella Valley at La Quinta for the American Express. Any further, let's go ahead and post the poll question for this evening. Looks like Windfinder's not having a good time there. The poll question for this evening, a little bit of spoilers here. Which of the big four in ownership are you staying away from? So there are 4 players right now that are projected to be 20% or more owned this week. Scotty Scheffler at 14.2, Ben Griffin at 10.2, Bobby Mack at 94, or Siwoo at 9,000 even. Those 4 players right now are what is projected to be 20+% owned for the week. So which of those 4 are... Again, coming back to Windfinder, nothing to look at here. Just play the guys that you think are going to play the trio of courses the best, and then has the best opportunity to play well on Sunday at the Stadium Course. So not anything to look at in terms of a forecast. And of course, no wave advantage, if you will. You would want to stack by courses. Nothing to do there. We come to Fantasy National. And I am going to show you this part, it's actually right at the top here. Fantasy National has begun their migration over to the rabbit hole on BetSperts Golf. I don't know if my mix... Yeah, so I tried to click the mixed condition model tab, and it does not come up. I'm a little surprised that the American Express is here. The American Express was not loaded as of, 7:30, so a few hours ago. Hey, good evening, P. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Hopefully you had a good Sony Open. You've had a good week. You're ready for the American Express. How are things in your neck of the woods? You are actually going to be dodging a lot of the wintry weather that my area is supposed to get. So not that you aren't accustomed to that, being where you're from in the country, but we're supposed to get quite a bit of snow this weekend in my neck of the woods. So sounds like you're going to be spared from that as of now. But it's good to see you in chat. Thanks for jumping in there as always, P. It's very, very much appreciated. It's going to be cold, but you guys are going to get crushed. Yeah, that is the consensus that I have seen so far, at least in terms of forecast. Fortunately, I don't have many places to be this weekend, so I might just be snowed in. So, but I appreciate the concern there, P, and the messages, and thanks again for jumping in chat. So, because we're not able to go to the mixed condition model, thanks to Fantasy National beginning its migration with the rabbit hole and bet spurts, I'm going to have to just jump to my rankings. Now, before I go into my rankings, I do want to cover a little bit of my mixed condition model. So it'll be a little bit out of order because I have got it sorted by percent as opposed to by page view. So bear with me on that. I'm hoping that Fantasy National has finished its migration next week. We'll just have to see. For this week, a lot of birdies are better. Look, winning scores here get into the mid-20s, maybe even high 20s. You're going to have to go low to contend. I want to see the players who are adept at getting lots of birdies or even eagles, especially with the easy relative to par filter selected. 15% there, 15% in par threes. Look, every single one of these courses, Stadium Course, La Quinta, and Nicklaus Tournament Course, 3 of the 5 or 4 of the 6 toughest holes are the par threes. So if you're playing the par threes well, you're gaining a lot on the field. So I want to see who is adept at playing difficult par threes or all par threes, but particularly who plays par threes well because they're going to have an advantage. 15% in par threes. 15% in these short par fives. La Quinta, all 4 of their par fives are 500 to 550. Nicklaus Tournament Course has 2 or 3. Stadium Course only has 1, at least on the scorecard, but I'm just trying to highlight here the players who are very, very good at playing these very short par fives. Play them well, you're going to have a big advantage. 15% in the short par fives. This is a Pete Dye course, or at least half of the time it's a Pete Dye course. You can't ignore the irons. 10% in strokes gained approach. 10% in opportunities. With winning scores in the mid to high 20s, you're going to have to give yourself 32, 34, maybe even 36 opportunities during the week. So I want to see who gives themselves the most opportunities and then converts them. So 10% in opportunities when rounds are easy. Only 5% in putting. This becomes a putting contest a lot of times because of how easy it is. But putting is such a fickle statistic. I didn't want to overrate it or put too much emphasis into it. Only 5% on Poa Trivialis Overseed. These are, Innisbrook and Harbortown and TBC Scottsdale, TBC Sawgrass, all of the courses we've talked about all week that have Poa Trivialis Overseed listed on the GCSAA. 5% there. 5% in driving distance when on short courses. We looked at this Monday night, and it was actually a pretty darn good correlation between the players that were very high in this metric and filter combination and who have played well at the American Express. So this is a little bit of my tangent or my lean this week. 5% in driving distance on short courses. These are some of the toughest bunkers on the PGA Tour, both fairway bunkers and around the green, highlighted, of course, by the big Mariana Trench 19-foot deep bunker on 16 at the stadium course, 5% in sand saves, 5% each in the wedge proximities, with this being a short course and all of the plethora of short par 4s and short par 5s. Want to make sure your players are very good with wedges, and then 5% each in the short par 4s. So there's a look at the mixed condition model that I have for this week. I know it's a little bit out of order. My apologies. It's out of my control with Fantasy National starting to migrate. Areas where I might be weak, I don't have any off the tee per se, just the 5% in driving distance. So if off the tee does matter, I'll be weak to that. I don't have any around the green. I only have 5% in the sand saves, if that matters. Putting is going to be a big factor. So if the Poa Trivialis overseed, stalwarts, guys like Sam Burns, Jacob Bridgman, Akshay Bhatia's putt this surface well, Denny McCarthy, number 1 on the surface, Sam Ryder's number 2 on the surface, Taylor Pendrith, number 3. Like, if those guys end up playing well, I'm going to be a little bit weak to that because I only have 5% in putting. If the 200-plus procs matters because of the par 5s, so be it. But that's why I put 15% in the par 5s. So there's the reasoning behind the choices that I made for the mixed condition model. Good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Last week was a disaster. Mine wasn't a complete disaster. I certainly had a losing week, but I don't really feel all that bad about it, considering it was the first tournament of the year, kind of getting back into the flow of things. I had some pretty decent recommendations. Denny McCarthy over Nico Echeverria, Russell Henley top 20, which was fine. I mentioned Daniel Berger, who finished top 5. Tom Hoagie was up there until a couple of bogeys late. So I feel pretty good about my performance at the Sony. Things just didn't kind of break my way. Now, I had some bad recommendations too. Like, I full faded Bobby Mack, and he played well. Full faded Siwoo, he played well. I was big on Christopher Raytan, and he sprayed the ball everywhere at Waialae. So, little good, little bad. We're going to try and right the ship this week, Darnell, at the American Express. Thanks for jumping in chat. And good evening, John. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. I saw your comment a little bit earlier. Yes, very delayed show this evening due to my prior commitments of playing in a co-ed wiffle ball league during the winter on Wednesdays, and tonight's game went extra long. But we're here. Hopefully we'll have everything that you need to finalize your lineups and your wagers. Don't forget that I do have that poll question posted, so I would be interested in hearing the community's thoughts. Put your vote in there, and I'll give my answer throughout the show. Played Henley and McCarthy. The rest wasn't great. McCarthy wasn't all that great yet last week, and I was really high on him. So good and bad, Darnell. We'll try to get back this week. All right, I covered the mixed condition model. Let's get into the rankings. For your information, if you are a new viewer, and as a reminder for returning viewers, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The Fantasy National rank, which is a straight numerical ranking based on the mixed condition model that we just talked about. The metrics and percentages and all that. Fantasy National will spit out a ranking. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value at how well they've, what I generally say, played at that course. I understand that it's called course value. Just understand for this week and any week that we have a course rota like Torrey Pines, like Pebble Beach, course value is the same as tournament value. But the lower the number, the better. This is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value at how well they have played that tournament the past 5 years. And we're playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options off of our fellow contestants. So projected ownerships per Gabe and his article, the deluxe article on Wednesdays. These are from him. And so I bring that into part of the calculation into my rankings. So my rankings for the American Express go as such. I've got Ben Griffin as my number 1 player. I don't know if I would truly make him number one. Just understand that Scotty is, 10%, 10 to 12% more projected ownership, which is going to hurt. And Ben Griffin's only played here once, but it was pretty solid. So he's got a lower course value than Scotty does. Those two things are what is bringing Scotty down. You saw he was number one, and it's not particularly close. He's number one per Fantasy National in straight model ranking, obviously. But Ben Griffin, number one. Siwoo Kim, number two. Patrick Cantlay, third. Combination of excellent course value. He is the strokes gained total leader at the American Express the past 5 years. And he's very unique. Yes, the overall would technically be the rank in order, give or take. I would still put Scotty number one, but he ranks fourth because he's being hurt by the massive amount of ownerships, and he doesn't have as good of a course value as these other guys because he did miss the cut once in his 4 tries here. So it's good to look at it and be objective a little bit on it, but you also have to have some common sense. Anytime Scotty tees it up, he's going to be the number one player in my rankings, even if he doesn't list out that way based on the mathematical computation. Scotty's the best player in the world right now. Anytime he tees it up, he would be my number one player, all things considered. So Scotty fourth, and Sam Burns rounds out my top 5. Sepp Straka, Harry Hall, Russell Henley, Jacob Bridgman, and Davis Thompson round out my top 10. Look, at the very top here, the first 8 players are all 9K and above. That's just not sustainable. You can't make a lineup with those 8, 6 of those 8 players. So we're going to have to find some options elsewhere. But this is a top-heavy part of the leaderboard or tournament. I'm trying to say top. This is a top-heavy price board for the American Express. And you see that in these rankings that, the top players are all up here, with the exception of a couple 9Ks that are falling. But still, it's going to be really hard to separate among the 9 and the 10Ks. So there's a look at my rankings, at least based on the mathematical formula for the American Express. Let's sort on the price board, figure out where our fellow contestants seem to be going at various areas of the price board and how we can maneuver around them. So in the 5 digits, in the 10Ks, we have 4 players. Scotty at 14.2, Patrick Cantlay at 10.4, Ludwig at 10.3, and Ben Griffin at 10.2. As you can see, there is one player who clearly does not rate out well in the 10Ks for me. Therefore, it is a full fade. It's a very dangerous game that I'm playing there. Ludwig is one of the most talented players in the world, but he has never played here. And we discussed this Monday night. Course history kind of matters here. Tournament history kind of matters here. And some players just don't adapt or don't, acquiesce well to the Pro-Am format. So I'm just going to sit back on Ludwig. I'm going to see if he's fully healthy from that knee injury from last year. He's never played the American Express. He also didn't rate out well per Fantasy National. I understand that he's a pivot off of the other 2 big names here in the 10Ks. I'm just not going to play any Ludwig. Instead, I am going to play Scotty a decent amount, probably half. And that's probably not the right way to go about it. You probably should be all in or all out on Scotty. But I just don't have the strongest feelings for or against Scotty this week. So I'm going to play exactly half of my lineups are Scotty and half aren't. It's just the way it is. If I was going to be bold or try to take a stand, I would say you need to be, all in on Scotty or all out on Scotty. I just can't do it this week. There's a lot of players in this range that I like. And building Scotty lineups with a 9K is darn near impossible. At least in my experience, which gives you a little bit of a feeling of how I feel on the 6Ks. So I am going to play half Scotty and half not Scotty. That's not probably the best decision, but it's what I'm going with this week. I will play a little bit of Ben Griffin. He is the second most popular player for a good reason. Big breakout in 2025. Doesn't look like he's stopping anytime soon, having played the Sony pretty well. He had a bad Saturday, but came back and played well on Sunday. And I'm going to play Cantley. I know he hadn't played yet this year. I mean, it's only one tournament from the Sony, but look, he's a strokes gained total leader around the American Express. And he's the most unique player in the 10Ks. I'm going to play some Patrick Cantley. I know he's not popular, but Patrick Cantley plays very, very well around here. So in the 10Ks, in the 5 digits, I'm half Scotty, half not Scotty. I'll play a little bit of Ben Griffin, and I'm going to Patrick Cantley a fair share of the time. Probably 25 to 33% of the time, I'm going to Patrick Cantley. The uniqueness is very appealing with his prior tournament history. Even though he had a down year by Patrick Cantley standards, he's still one of the top 10 players in the world. I like that combination this week. I like the golfers starting on one of the course Scotty plays. Do you think putting players that all start on start one like Scotty? I don't hate that. But the only thing is, John, is that there isn't really a lot of wind to take into consideration. Like the forecast at the highest throughout Thursday, Friday, and Saturday was 5 miles an hour. I mean, these are dome-like conditions. Now, if there was a day that clearly had some wind pickup, then yes, I would probably want to target particular players that were playing a specific course on that windy day. But we just don't have that per the forecast. So I don't think it's necessary. If you want to do it, that's fine. Scotty, I believe, is starting on La Quinta. So his rotation will go La Quinta, Nicklaus Tournament course, and then the Stadium course. So the way the rotation works, it's alphabetical order. So if a player starts on La Quinta, then they'll go to Nicklaus, then they'll go to Stadium. If they make the cut, it goes to Stadium. Then obviously if they start on the Nicklaus Tournament course, they'll go Nicklaus Tournament, Stadium, La Quinta. And then if they start at the Stadium course, it's Stadium, La Quinta, Nicklaus. I like how they play the two easy courses first. Sure, that would be interesting to do a study on these multi-course rotas, particularly the AmEx and Pebble Beach, and see how many of the winners and top 5s and top 10s, how many come from one course. Like, do they play the main course 2 days in a row? Do they get the hard course out of the way? It'd be an interesting case study, John. So I mean, if that's where you're at, then sure. I just I didn't factor any of that in because I didn't think it was necessary due to the forecast. So that's it for the 10Ks. Moving down to the 9s, again, there's a lot in here that I like and that I wanted to play. So that's why I am, only half on Scotty, because I wanted to play some Sam Burns. I wanted to play some Matt Fitzpatrick, even though he has never played here. I really like Harry Hall this week, considering how well he played at the Sony, building on his 2025. Sepp is the defending champion at 12%. Makes that's very, very appealing. And Siwoo, even though he is one of the 4 top players in terms of ownership, like, it makes a lot of sense. I put this in the write-up over on Gabe's social media page. Siwoo has never lost strokes putting here at the American Express. So, knock on wood, I just jinxed it, but he's just very comfortable on these greens. Even though he doesn't rate out the best on Poa Trivialis, he's just very comfortable on these greens. So I want to make sure I have exposure to Siwoo. So there's quite a bit in the 9s that I want to play. That's why I'm only half in on Scotty. Scotty and Rose both play the easy courses on Thursday and Friday. Okay. I don't hate Justin Rose either, for what it's worth. In the 9Ks, there's only 2 players that I'm not playing. I'm not going to play Harris English. This just doesn't feel like a great Harris English course. You see that by the fairly high course value here. And it's very dangerous, just like Ludwig, but you got to plant your flag somewhere. Bobby Mack has only played the Amex once, so it's a very small sample size. But he was bottom 15 that year in terms of strokes gained. And as one of the 4 highest owned players, this is just an easy fade for me. Even though he's coming off a very, very solid Sony, the combination of high ownership and 1 bad performance, I'll stay away from Bobby Mack. So if Bobby Mack plays well, I'm behind the 8 ball very, very quickly. So I just accept that because you just can't play everybody. Otherwise, I'm playing a little bit of Sam Burns. I'm playing a smidge of Russell Henley. I made sure to have some exposure to Fitzpatrick. I've got a lot of exposure to Harry Hall, probably like 35 to 40%. Playing a little bit of Sepp Straka as the defending champion at sub, 13, 14% ownership. And of course, I want to make sure I have some exposure to Siwoo. Not playing him a whole ton because of the ownership, but I am playing him a little bit because he's so good here. So that's the way I feel about the 9s. I play DraftKings, John. Basically exclusively. That's what the salaries here are DK. Moving to the 8s. Much like I said last week, at the Sony, there are a couple players that I liked, but they kind of get squeezed because I wanted to make sure I play several players in the 9s. So the 3 players that I want to mention in the 8Ks, Taylor Pendrith. He hasn't been great here, but he's pretty darn good on short courses, especially when you get driver out of his hand. He's pretty darn good with fairway metals and long irons off tees. He's one of the best putters on this surface. So I do want to highlight Taylor Pendrith, even though he rated out fairly middling. I am mostly going to 2 players in the 8Ks, and they're at the bottom. Davis Thompson at 82, 3 for 3 here at the American Express, including a runner-up to John Rahm 3 years ago. He's gradually gotten worse. He had a runner-up, I think a T20 something, and a T52 or 51. So he's gradually gotten worse. But the combination of birdies when it's easy, opportunities when it's easy, and he's very, very good with the wedges. Very good with the wedges, which is what you need around these 3 courses. So I made sure that I put a whole lot, I had my fair share of Davis Thompson exposure. But the main player, my Denny McCarthy of last week, and I'm hoping he finishes better than tied for 40th like McCarthy did last week, I am all in on JT Poston. In fact, I'm hoping that Fantasy National will cooperate. JT Poston, and to answer your question, John, yes, I play mini lineups. So I can afford to, have a little exposure to a lot of players. Granted, I try to focus and build a pretty tight core, but I can afford to take a shot on, 2 or 3 players since I play several lineups. But looking at JT Poston, if we take a look at the American Express, he's got 4 straight top 25s, 3 straight top 15s, and another historical top 10. And let's take a look at his wins in his career. Let's take a look at what all of these courses have in common. TPC Summerlin, short, pretty easy. The John Deere, short, pretty easy, as long as there isn't a whole lot of wind. Sedgefield, short, pretty darn easy. What do all 3 of the courses that the American Express have? They're short and they're really easy. This is set up very, very well for JT Poston. 3M, Travelers is short. Barbasol is very, very easy. Or at least it used to be at Keen Trace. So I just love the setup for JT Poston. I am all in on him this week. And if he does not play well, I will lose. JT Poston is in most of my lineups, is what I'll say. He's in the most of my lineups. Him and Scotty are my number 1 and number 2. Hey, good evening, Matt. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Hopefully you are ready for this week. Ready for the snowstorm of the century of the millennium, as they are saying in our neck of the woods. Never a fade for me, at least not intentionally. Yeah. Fade in this regard, Matt, is a player that you're not playing. That you are, for example, if I'm fading Robert McIntyre 20%, that means in the lineups that I play, I am nowhere close to 21%. Or I'm not close to putting Robert McIntyre in 21% of my lineups. That's essentially what I'm trying to convey there, by talking about fade, as opposed to this glorious, blinding set of hair that I have for you all. But yeah, JT Poston is my go-to this week. He is my Denny McCarthy. 7.5% on a guy who, as I just showed you, 4 straight top 25s, 3 straight top 10s, loves short, easy courses, top 10 on short par 5s, putts this surface extremely well. Love everything about JT Poston, so I am all in on Poston this week. So in the 8Ks, I'll dabble a little bit of Taylor Pendrith. I didn't mention him. I don't hate Jason Day. He's just getting kind of squeezed for me because I like Thompson and I'm in love with Poston. So I will have Jason Day a couple times. He's played very, very well here at the American Express. He's getting squeezed out because I'm using so much Poston, and I want to get Davis Thompson in lots of my lineups. Yes, Matt, that is correct. It is the gambler's nomenclature for passing or not using that player. Moving down into the 7s. You mentioned him, John, but I don't hate Justin Rose. Rose has played pretty well here. He's a little bit higher ownership than I would like, but strong par 3 performance, great on these shorter par 5s. I wouldn't worry too much about his performance on Poa Trivialis. He's very good with his wedges, probably one of the best in terms of combination, 75 to 125. So I don't hate Justin Rose there, John. I think you're gonna struggle to get Scotty and Justin Rose into a lot of your lineups unless there's somebody in the 6Ks that you really like. There's a couple for me, but more often than not, I just wasn't the biggest fan of the 6Ks. So it was pretty hard for me to justify going Scotty and Rose, especially since I'm all in on Poston at $100 more. But I do have some Justin Rose, a little bit. I also want to direct your attention to Adam Scott. Adam Scott played fine last week at the Sony. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. 7%. He's played here before, just not in the past 5 years. One of the top putters on this surface. Very good with his very short wedges. Third in sand saves if he gets into trouble. I kind of like Adam Scott at 7%. Again, 7,900. I'm mostly going to JT Poston, but Adam Scott is worth a look. One player that I'm not all that keen on is Akshay. Even though he's only 7.5% and rated very, very well in the mixed condition model, this is a full fade, meaning I am playing absolutely zero Akshay Bhatia. He is 0 for 3 here at the American Express. There's just something about this tournament that he has not gravitated towards. Sure, that could change this year, but I'm going to wait until I see him prove it. Yes, he's great. Birdies are better when it's easy. Supposedly really good on this surface. Lots of opportunities. I can't overlook the fact that he is 0 for 3. He's never made the cut at this tournament. So I'm going to pass on Akshay. Berger, a little bit popular. I like Berger. I'm going to use Berger. I don't like the fact that he is 13%, but I am going to use him. Moving down, I know he rated out terribly, but don't ignore Christian Bezuidenhout. Bezuidenhout's been very good around here. He's got a runner-up to Nick Dunlap 2 years ago, when Dunlap won as when he won as an amateur. I know this is really ugly, one of the worst rated players, but Seabez really, really likes this tournament, likes these courses. Still good with his irons. Still one of the best putters on this surface. Still very, very good at these short par fours. So don't overlook Seabez. One of the more interesting names this week is Will Zalatoris. Now, normally I am very hesitant to use a player that's coming off an injury. I used some Billy Horschel last week. It was okay. I'm probably gonna dabble a little bit with Will Z, because he's been very good here. If you don't play mini lineups, or you don't want to take the risk on him not being fully healthy, I understand it 1,000%. But because I play mini lineups, I can take a chance. I'm going to take a chance on Will Z this week, and thinking he might be healthy. So 4.5% on a player that is as talented as he is, I will take the chance. Max Grazerman at 75 is fine. Don't hate it. Keith Mitchell, Team No Putt. You hear about this tournament becoming a putting contest. And Keith Mitchell is not a very good putter. We all know this. Keith Mitchell is 4 for 4 in making the cut here at the American Express with 3 very high finishes. All 3. I think he's actually 3 for 3. My apologies. He's either 3 for 3 or 4 for 4, but he's got 3 top 25s. So there's something about this tournament that he gravitates towards. So I'm going to play, probably more than I should, Keith Mitchell, especially since he is the number 1 short wedge player in this field. Second in driving distance when it's easy, on short courses. We all know that he's not a very good putter. So I'm going to take some chances with Keith Mitchell, and I'm going to take some chances with Jacob Bridgman. I love Jacob Bridgman this week. He's played here twice. T32, T21. Very good on these short par 5s. Very good putter on this surface. Pretty darn solid with short wedges too. 51st and 30th is not terrible. So I like Jacob Bridgman a lot. Smalley's worth a look. He's played very well here. I'm a little bit more concerned with Smalley, but he's worth a look considering how well he has played this tournament in the past. Moving into the low 7s, not a whole lot I like here. I talked about Matty Schmid last week, and then he did what Matty Schmid does and misses the cut. He rates out fairly well again. Not in love with it. Jesper Svensson could be interesting, but he's only played once here. It was really bad. This is the classic, do you believe in the analytics or do you believe in the prior course history? Whichever you value is how you're going to determine what you do with Jesper Svensson. So I'm going to play him once or twice because he rates out so well, and he's very unique. But that could go sideways very, very quickly on you, considering how poorly he has done. At 7,000, I want to highlight William Mao. William Mao is probably most known for taking the 13 last year on the 16th hole. Yes, you heard me. He took a 13 on that hole. Went +8 on that hole alone. But when you dig into the numbers, you take that hole away from him, he would have made the cut. The 53 other holes, he would have made the cut. Up until he had that disaster of a hole last year, he was -2 on his round. He came back and shot like 7 under at La Quinta the next day. Again, William Mao is most well known for taking that gargantuan number because he got stuck in the Mariana Trench. But I want you to look across here. He doesn't have many bad statistics. He's got one. The short wedges. That's it. Otherwise, like, I know it's funny considering I was talking about him being poor in the Mariana Trench. He was actually 5th in sand saves at the end of the year. Decent distance. Decent putter on this surface. 2.5% owned. I'm going to play some William Mao. Exercise those demons, as they say. All right, to finish up the price board, and then we'll make some lineups. 3 players in the 6Ks that I want to highlight. 4, technically. The first being Mac Meisner. If you're big on Mac Meisner, just understand he is 10.5% projected ownership. Seems like everybody's going to Mac Meisner in the 6Ks. So if you're thinking you're getting unique on Mac Meisner, think again. You're not. He's 10.5% projected ownership. The first name that I want to highlight in the positive is actually your boy, P. I really like Doug Ghim this week. And I understand what some of you all might be thinking. This is a putting contest, and Doug Ghim's one of the worst putters. What are you thinking? Well, this is what I'm thinking. Very good at the wedges. Very, very good with the wedges. Amazing at the very short par 4s. Gives himself a lot of opportunities. He's just got to make a couple of putts. And he's done it here before. This course value is pretty solid. Top 30 in irons. Par 3s are fine. Birdies are better are fine. If I bring up his page view just very, very quickly, Doug Ghim at 68. He's been okay here. And putting-wise, he's been okay here. He's got a top 25. He's got a top 10 a few years ago. He's gained putting here before. I really like Doug Ghim. Plays his best when it's easy. Plays really well when it's calm. I'll take shots on Doug Ghim. Absolutely. Don't have anything wrong with Doug Ghim. The Ghim Reaper. I played one of his home courses a couple weeks ago. Nice. Can you do a dive on Lauer and Villegas? Wasn't too impressed with either of those. Lauer, you'll have to help me out in the pricing where they are. I know Villegas is quite a bit lower. Justin Lauer is... I might just have to search for him. Lauer. 62. Oh, way down here. Okay. Lauer rated out okay. Played well last year. Absolutely. Lauer's great on these shorter par 5s. I worry about his par 3 performance. If we take a look at Lauer, Villegas is pretty simple. Like, Villegas hasn't played well in more than a year. So I'm not there with that. In terms of Lauer, I mean, top 10 last year, sure. I'd be a little bit wary because all of that was in the putting. He was actually negative in ball striking last year, John. I'd be a little bit worried with that. But you're right. He plays his best when it's easy. He's gradually gotten better here. So I don't think it's the worst. by any means. I would heavily prefer Lauer over Villegas. That's for sure. I mean, Villegas played the Bermuda okay, and he played it well. I should be fair to Camilo Villegas. He played it well. But Villegas, top 10 last year, sure. I can't get there with Villegas. He generally putts well here, which is one thing. What's he been like lately? I mean, of course, we don't get the strokes gained from Bermuda, but like the approach before the Bermuda, like he had lost in what, 6 straight tournaments with the irons and off the tee. That's not comforting. He didn't play last week. Yeah, I would much rather go to Lauer as opposed to Vegas if you're in that area of the price board. John? Sam, thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Thoughts on Kiefer this week? I was pretty high on him last week. I do think he's going to be good like full season. I think he just needs to get used to, or he has to see some of these courses. He had never seen the Sony, didn't play particularly well. He hasn't seen the American Express. I would temper expectations for a little while on Johnny Kiefer. I mean, you see, he rated out, bottom 2/3, 99th out of 156. I like the player, and he was one of my first locks in terms of like full season type things. But I would be pretty patient on Johnny Kiefer until we get more into the spring and summer, Sam. But good question. Thoughts on Michael Brennan? I saw an interesting thing on Brennan. He was 40-1 to win at the end of the fall, and he was like 20-1 to top 5 this week. It's amazing how golf works. I'm not a big fan of Brennan this week. You think about his win at the Bank of Utah. The Bank of Utah, yes, you have to keep it within the confines, just like the stadium course a little bit. But the Bank of Utah also gave you a little bit more freedom. Like those fairways were pretty forgiving. Now, if you missed the fairway, you were in deep trouble. But the fairways themselves were pretty wide. I'm not the biggest fan of Michael Brennan. Not yet. I think he needs courses like maybe Torrey next week, where he can take advantage of his length. That makes some sense. TBC Craig Ranch would make some sense. These driver heavy courses that have some miss room. I understand that the Farmers fairways are real narrow, but you're not really getting into deep trouble. You're just in rough if you miss the fairway. So there's 2 more names that I want to mention in the 6Ks. I mentioned Doug Gim. I'm not afraid of the putter, or I'm hoping that he gives himself so many opportunities that he just happens to make a couple. Patrick Rogers is he in the 6s? I thought he was maybe, low 7s. 6.5%, but he's not played particularly well here, P. The other 2 names that I want to mention, which is kind of interesting considering we were at that part of the price board, John. 6,300, Andrew Putnam. Putnam's been great at this tournament. Great. And anytime you don't have to factor in off the tee, Putnam gets even better. Top 15 in par 3s. And again, these par 3s are going to be extremely important this week. Middling with birdies or better, that's fine. Decent enough putter on this surface. You're playing Andrew Putnam because he's very good with the wedges. I know this seems middling, but he's pretty darn good with his wedges. Plays pretty good on the short par 4s. Less than 1% owned for a player that has been very, very good at this tournament. I really like Andrew Putnam. And the Tom Hoagie play this week, the mad scientist play, the lightning crackling, building the Frankenstein monster play this week is Kensei Hirata. Top 25 last week at the Sony, so we know he's at least in good tournament form. He's also top 30 in the 4 main metrics that we gathered. Top 30 in irons in this loaded field. Top 30 in irons. Top 30 on these short par 4s. Top 30 in these par 3s. Take a look at his short par 4 performance. Very good. Solid enough with the proximities with his wedges. At 0.1% projected ownership. I'm going to take a lot of shots with Kensei Hirata. That's the mad scientist play this week. So there's a look at the price board. Been going on for a little while. I want to make sure I cover lineups and, of course, the 2026 Picks Challenge. So, I've got 2 standard or chalky lineups I got to make. One is Scotty and one is not. So, if our fellow contestants are building Scotty lineups, they're coming down to Mac Meisner at 6,900 and 10.5%. So, just understand that is where they're at. You're not going to get a lot of uniqueness with Mac Meisner. Otherwise, they might be doing a double 6. I try not to force the chalky lineup into that, but the rest of this lineup would be very difficult, and this is why it was really hard for me to build or to go all in on Scotty, not as Scotty the golfer, but Scotty the pricing. It's just really hard to build lineups. Got a bolt. All right. Well, thanks for jumping in chat, P. Very, very much appreciated. Good luck this week. Stay safe this weekend if it's going to be really, really cold in your neck of the woods. But again, always appreciate that you take the time to stop in, say hello and chat. Best wishes and good luck this week. It looks like if our fellow contestants are going to Scotty, it looks like Patrick Rogers at 6.5%, stocked up on the weed and the beer. I'll be watching some golf. That's what I'll say. Take it easy, P. But this is the trouble with Scotty. It's just really, really hard to fit anybody, beyond a 7K or a low 8 with Scotty. Like Ryan Gerard is like the next highest ownership at 12%. So you're going to see some weird combinations of Scotty lineups. Just understand that Mac Meisner is one of the 2 6Ks that people seem to be going to with Scotty. Otherwise, if people are trying to beat Scotty, they're looking like they're going to Ben Griffin. So it's Ben Griffin. Bobby Mack is definitely in this. It could take your pick between Bobby Mack and Siwoo Kim. That's the decision that most of our fellow contestants seem to be making there. And then they'll come down to, again, this is probably Ryan Gerard. Yeah. Ryan Gerard. Daniel Berger's in this at 13%. Rico Hoey could be in this. Let's drop down 7% McCarthy. 6.5% Patrick Rogers. I'm going to try and keep them out of the 6s. So Rogers maybe. And then 79 or 8,000. Justin Rose at 10% could work. So you're at, 90% total ownership, which is pretty chalky. This is the makings of a pretty standard non-Scotty lineup this week, seemingly. So how are we going to maneuver around that? There's 3 ways you can go about it. The way I've been doing my Scotty lineups, again, I told you I've been doing half Scotty, half not. There are 2 or 3 players in the 6Ks, again, highlighted by the mad scientist play of Kensei Hirata, going all the way down to 62. I've also not been afraid to go double 6 with Hirata and Doug Gim. That frees up at least some amount of maneuverability up here, you can go maybe a mid-8. For me, it's been JT Poston, but you could maybe try a Davis Thompson. Or in your case, John, you maybe can go like a Justin Rose. I know you mentioned a couple of players in the 62s. If you're not high on Hirata, or if you're higher on Justin Lauer, maybe Justin Lauer is this spot here. Find you another 6. I would recommend Doug Gim or maybe a low 7. And then you've got some maneuverability here in the mid-7s, and there's plenty of players that you can look at. Max Grazerman has been very good here. Keith Mitchell. Jacob Bridgman, I really like this week. I'm going to go Jacob Bridgman here. And then 7,500 is Keith Mitchell, Denny McCarthy, Max Grazerman. So that's the way I've been building my Scotty lineups, is that I'm taking a shot with 2 6Ks, Gim, Putnam, Hirata, maybe 1 or 2 others. I've even been sometimes getting really, really greedy, going Putnam and like going 666. That way I can squeeze in a 9. Like if I want to try to squeeze in like a Harry Hall, I can do it. And then at 72, like I can fit like a William Mao in here, who I'm pretty high on in the low 7s. Like I've built a couple of these, Scotty in a 9 and 3 6s, or Scotty Davis Thompson, a 7, couple 6s. That's one way you can go about it. The complete opposite of that is to go the full balance build. And I actually don't mind that this week. Let's say you start at like Harry Hall, who I'm very, very high on. And you don't even have to flirt with the low 7s if you start Harry Hall. You go Harry Hall. Yes, Siwoo is pretty popular, but it's okay. I really like Siwoo this week. You're just building this balanced lineup like Davis Thompson I'm really high on. JT Poston. I mean, you have 7,800 basically per player. You can go a Justin Rose or an Adam Scott. Daniel Berger. Berger might be a little bit too heavy with Siwoo Kim. Maybe you go Seabass. I know he doesn't rate out well, but Seabass has played this tournament extremely well. Maybe you take a chance on Will Zalatoris. And, of course, the more money you're willing to leave on the table, the more unique you're going to be. 79, you can go like Adam Scott. You can drop down like maybe Rico Hoey. Jacob Bridgman, if you're willing to leave quite a bit of money on the table. I'll finish this out with Adam Scott. Like, there's a lineup that's pretty darn unique, despite the fact that you're using one of the 4 big heavy hitters. Yes, you're doing a balanced lineup, so you're foregoing Scotty, you're foregoing Ben Griffin, maybe you're really high on Burns or Henley. I really like these balanced lineups. I've got a fair share of them. In my non-Scotty lineups, I've got, I don't know, probably 20 to 25% balanced lineups. That might be heavy. Maybe 15 to 20% balanced lineups. I really don't mind them this week, because you're taking some shots on some pretty darn good players that are anywhere from 7 to 10% ownership. And again, I love JT Poston. So the third way to go about it is to kind of mix match the two. You're not playing Scotty, but you're not going full balanced either. Like for me, this is Patrick Cantlay, because he's the pivot off of Ben Griffin, Henley. You can even go Burns here. Day ranked pretty low, but I mean he's been excellent here. Probably one of the better putters on this surface. He's generally better when it's difficult, but you see opportunities when it's easy. Well, I shouldn't say that. Probably not better when it's difficult. His irons don't usually rate out well, John. And most of my mixed condition models focus on irons. So that's why he rates out fairly low for me. But again, I'm not ignoring the fact that he has been very good here. One of the better putters. Amazing at these short par 4s. I made sure I put Jason Day in a lineup or two. To finish this lineup very quickly before I go to the 2026 picks challenge, like Patrick Cantlay, pick whoever you like in the 9Ks. I don't mind Sam Burns. We can try Matt Fitzpatrick even. 14%. I know he hadn't played well or played this tournament yet, but he's been okay at Pebble Beach. So I don't think the Pro-Am format is going to rattle him too much. Cantlay, Fitz. Again, I'm just all in on JT Poston. Come down into the mid sevens. This could be Grazerman. This could be Bridgman. I'll throw Keith Mitchell into this one since he's been very, very good here as well. Mitchell going lower into the low sevens. Again, you can look at Johnny Kiefer to Sam's question earlier. I don't think I would go there, but this would be a decent enough spot. You could take a chance on Kiefer. You can take a chance on Jesper Svensson. I actually don't mind Kevin Roy. If we want to end, bottom out there. And then this is like Jacob Bridgman again, or Alex Smalley is acceptable here if you're a big believer in course history and you see how unique you are. Can you put ownership in order? Sure can. Let me grab all of this. This is very, very quickly, and then we'll go to the picks challenge. So I'll sort on column H. So your top, and again, these ownerships are per Gabe. He's not going to be perfect. He's always going to have a player or two that comes in way under this or way over this. But to be fair to Gabe, he's been very, very good in the 9 to 10 months that he's been doing it. And I wouldn't use it if I didn't believe in it. So there's your ownerships, projected ownerships in order. Scotty, Ben Griffin, Bobby Mack, Siwoo. Henley's getting a lot of love. Burns, Fitz, Hall, Berger, Kitayama, and so on down. The answer to the poll question for me, I'm going to stay away from Bobby Mack. I know that's dangerous considering he played very well at the Sony. There's just too much in the 9Ks that I like. So I'm going to stay away from Bobby Mack, thinking that there's something about this tournament he doesn't like. He's only played it one time. I know it's a small sample size. Very quickly, I'll give you my core. Again, half of my lineups are Scotty and half aren't. So understand what I'm going with that. If I'm not doing Scotty, it's either Patrick Cantlay or a little bit of Griffin, a little bit of Fitzpatrick. Harry Hall is absolutely core for me. Siwoo's a little bit less to an extent. All in on JT Poston. Berger is core for me this week. I don't like his ownership, but it is what it is. Jacob Bridgman is core for me. William Mao is core for me. Doug Gim, Putnam, and Hirata. Those are the players that are my core. Again, understand 50% of my lineups are Scotty, 50% aren't. And that's why I have the distinguishing thing there. So there's my core. All right, let's move quickly to the 2025 Picks Challenge. I'm going to turn off the camera. That way you can see all of the selections. If it isn't clear, I'm going to go out on a limb this week. I was very boring, and I took Russell Henley last week, the tournament favorite, etc., etc. I'm going to step out on a limb. I'm going to take JT Poston to win this week. Again, 3 straight top 10s, 3 straight top 15s, 4 straight top 25s. Scotty Scheffler is the tournament favorite, sure. I'm a big believer in JT Poston this week. Gabe's going to take Ben Griffin. My favorite play would be JT Poston. I can't put him in multiple categories. So I'm going to highlight Jacob Bridgman as my favorite play in the mid-sevens at 7,400 and at 5% ownership. I think that's great value. Lets you build a lot of different style of lineups using Bridgman at 74. Gabe's favorite play is Harry Hall. I'm going to fade Bobby Mack for the reasons I've talked about. Gabe's going to fade the most popular 6K play in Mac Meisner, which I don't hate that idea at all either. Mad Scientist play, I'm going to go with Kensei Harada. Again, talked about him a little bit this evening. Gabe's going to go with Jesper Svensson as his Mad Scientist play. Fear of missing out player, we're going to make sure we put in the lineups, even though our conscience says we probably shouldn't. I'm going to play Siwoo. Despite all of his ownership, the guy has never lost strokes putting at the American Express. So I'm going to bank on that continuing. Gabe's going to FOMO Kurt Kitayama. And this is a little bit misleading. This is our wild card category. It's supposed to say top 26 non-Scotty Scheffler debut. Because Gabe and I both think Scotty Scheffler is going to be the top, player that hadn't played yet. So in the interest of being different, and I don't know if he is going to be the top, 2026 debut, but I'm most interested in seeing Will Zalatoris. Is he truly fully healthy? If he is, this is going, get in on the pricing discount that you have on Will Zalatoris while you can. So, I'm taking a little bit of a different look there. Maybe most interesting 2026 debut. And then Gabe is going to go with Alex Noren as the top 2026 debut. We did top rookie last week, John. That was our wild card category last week. If you're asking me who the top rookie is this week, I think, just kind of quickly perusing the price board here, I kind of like John Perry, the Englishman from the DP World Tour. He played pretty well last week in YLI, or at YLI. I'll take John Perry if you're asking top rookie. Interesting. I like that. Looks like the community's pretty well situated, that Scotty's price and or ownership is prohibitive to them. So looks like Scotty Scheffler is the community's choice in terms of which of the big four in ownership that they are staying away from. I'll bring us back to Microsoft Excel. I'll show you my my core again. But that's going to be it for a DFS Tactics show. I've got several people to thank. If I could talk, I need to thank P, John, Matt, Sammy. I think that's everybody. And Darnell. Apologies. So P, Darnell, John, Matt, and Sammy. Thank you all very, very much for jumping into chat. Very, very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Hopefully this week will be better than the debut of 2026 from the Sony. Quick reminder that our write-ups, Gabe's and my write-ups, are over on his social media page. We are tied 4-4 after week one. So I'm going to try and get back on the correct side of that scoreboard and begin to defend my title since I won 2025. Thanks again for all the support, for all the wagers you've made this week for the American Express, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the American Express, for this weekend and every weekend. May all your bets be profitable.